Anyone who has tried to solve a difficult math problem will be familiar with the common situation whereby you get stuck at a problem for a long time because without knowing you are making a false assumption about the problem. After a while of thinking, we finally realize that the reason you are not getting a correct answer is because things which at first seemed obvious or simple were in fact not as obvious as you thought, and your assumptions which seemed solid and logical were in fact wrong on deeper inspection. This exact same phenomenon is present in the biblical story of Job, whereby Job, a seemingly good person and servant of God, is punished severely for apparently no good reason. The superficial logic of the story has for centuries posed a logical problem for Jewish and Christian theologians. Since if God is just and rewards good deeds but punishes evil, then how can he punish Job? This would seem illogical. Might I suggest, therefore, that although this seems illogical on the surface, that much like a math problem, nevertheless, the solution to this moral problem is indeed logical and fair, contrary to first appearances. In this problem, the false logical assumption we are making concerns not whether Job is good or bad, which seems to cause contradiction and paradox, since if he is good, he should be rewarded, and if he is bad, he should be punished. He is good yet punished, so according to this understanding, we have an intractable problem. Rather, the root of the contradiction stems not from a consideration of reward and punishment, but rather from our assumptions about self-identity, what it means to be a person, and whether a person, aside from their actions, can be judged as good or evil. To elaborate, Job's anger at God, which is based on his feeling of injustice, stems from a deeper assumption which Job does not realize he is making. Since by assuming he is being punished unfairly, Job is in fact assuming that there is indeed a he or she to be punished. Job holds to the belief that because he has always been faithful to God and done actions in the past, that this is sufficient not to be punished in the present. But this is a fallacy and does not reflect the true and much deeper logic of God. Job holds to this image of himself, a self-image of a good person, and when he is punished, he questions the nature of punishment, predicated on the idea of his self-image which he holds. Nevertheless, this self-image, or belief about his identity and his morality, is altogether an illusion, since there is no true self apart from our actions, or in other words, what we think we are, what we have done in the past, doesn't matter at all. What we in fact are is nothing more than what we are doing right now. Like Job, you can cling to a belief about yourself as a good person, and become upset when you perceive that your goodness is not appreciated. But true goodness, rather, and not goodness which is simply remembered or imagined, is a constant, unceasing way of being, and an action occurring in the present. According to this understanding, the self as transitory, as something which is constantly changing, and which is really just an illusion. The only thing which really exists is our actions, not what we imagine about ourselves or what other people imagine about us. In this regard, Job is not being punished unfairly, but rather his moral ego or sense of zealous superiority is being challenged and destroyed by God. In this sense, the true spirit of goodness is not an idea or a self-perception we hold about ourselves. It is pure right action, which goes beyond a narrow and small-minded, singularly conscious sense of entitlement, in which intrinsically can neither be destroyed nor taken away. What God has taken from Job is not his good actions, but rather Job's self-identity and belief that he is a good person, above tragedy or punishment which none of us are. The logic of God's judgment remains fair, insofar as good deeds can never be repaid with evil, since good deeds do not belong to a person, but are selfless. This superficial, childish, and zealous notion of ourselves as either good people or bad people, as people who do good in the expectation of being rewarded, this does not stand up to the logic of God's judgment. The person or ego itself is thus merely a temporal illusion, which can neither be punished nor rewarded, yet it is the spirit in us which does good for the sake of good, or evil for the sake of evil, which is all that remains when everything fake and transient and of the flesh has been blown away. The story of Job is thus less of a story concerning the logic of God's punishment, as is first conceived, but rather, and more importantly, a story about the identity of man and what man in fact is. Upon realizing that nothing essential of us remains apart from our actions, and that truly good actions do not engender any expectation of reward, nor can the effect be taken away, God's actions remain just in testing and stripping away the image and illusion of what a man appears to be, leaving us only with what a man in fact is.